Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. You can vent with Heat fans all day, all night. Also get special stage shows from us called Floor Seats. Lots of cool stuff. Link right here in the description. That's Off the Floor. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, which we will get to in a second after the Heat lose to the Suns, 115 to 112.
Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. It's been a while since I've done a post game. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick in the 5 Reasons Sports. You got Brady Hawk. You can follow me at Brady Hawk 305. That's right. It is back up. Continue to follow Brady Hawk NBA. We don't know what we're going to turn that into. But Brady Hawk 305, make sure that you check that. And then also Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. As I mentioned before we came back here, the Heat lose 115 to 112. To the Phoenix Suns. They drop now to 3-4 on the season. 2 straight close losses to good Western Conference teams, and now they have 2 more good Western Conference teams coming up, Denver and Minnesota. We've talked about this road trip and the difficulty of it. You got to play almost perfect basketball. The Heat were pretty good in stretches. A few things happened again today. The third quarter collapse just started 6 minutes later. After the start of a really good third quarter, we'll get into the lineup change that was made in the second half and whether or not that's permanent for future first halves as well. And again, this comes down to plays at the end. Last game we saw lack of a defensive rebound and Sabonis make a tip in for Sacramento after, there was also a sequence where Herro fouled DeRozan while he was shooting and making a three. Tonight, they don't even get a shot off. The Heat get themselves back into this position where they could tie the game. Booker misses a free throw, and then the game ends basically with Butler passing the ball to Herro after Rozier inexplicably passed it to Butler. So we'll get into that play in a second. Before we do, I want to start. We do this at the beginning of all the time. Our friend Lynette, and we've got the player of the game. And now it's time for the A-Aggressive Insurance Player of the Night, sponsored by our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. That's with 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. If you need car insurance, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, or any other type of insurance, she's the person to go to. Based in Lauderhill, she services the entire Tri-County area here in South Florida, and she will make sure to get you the best deal. She'll probably talk to you about the Heat while you're at it. Reach out to her, insurancebylynette.com. And now, the player of the game. All right, well, there are actually a few options for this. Man, Nurkic killed them tonight. 20 points, 18 rebounds for Nurk on 6 of 8 shooting. He made all 3 of his threes. So he's certainly a candidate. Devin Booker ended up with 22, 4, and 9. On the Heat side, there are 2 guys. One we kind of expect at this point, and another we didn't necessarily. They get, 28 points from Tyler Herro on 9 of 15 shooting, 5 of 9 from 3, 28, 3, and 6. He's one of the best first quarter players in the league this year. And Haywood Highsmith had a tremendous game, 19 points, 7 rebounds off the bench, shot 7 of 8. But let's go with Kevin Durant. 13 of 23, 32 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. Brady, they tried everything. They tried Highsmith a lot late, just too short. Is there anything they could have done against him?
No, I really don't think so. I mean, they started the game with Bam on him, and Jovic was on Nurkic, which is fine. And literally the first defensive possession included Nurkic getting open on like a slip screen, Bam having to help down, and it's an immediate foul. And it's like that's the kind of stuff like people get worried about putting Bam on like these top tier players to get in foul trouble, and he's ultimately getting in foul trouble because he has to overhelp on these other guys. But I don't really know. I thought Haywood did a decent enough job. It's just that KD just has the height advantage, the length advantage, and he could just fire right over the top. And that's kind of the case with most of his matchups. He's just automatic. I was surprised you went with him as the player of the game. Like he had an incredible game. But the thing to me is like you're talking about a game where Miami, you have Tyler Herro that pretty much matches the offensive production of Kevin Durant. And all you need is somebody to match like the in and out game of Devin Booker in this one. I think he finished with 22. You just needed somebody to match Devin Booker's production on not his best night of the year. And you didn't get that. I mean, you have Tyler Herro, as you mentioned, 28 points on 9 of 15 shooting. Jimmy, Bam, and Terry Rozier, 34 points on 13 of 44 shooting.
Horrific.
Like, that is insane difference. And I just think Tyler got put in a position tonight where he was just terrific. Like he had a really great all around basketball game. Like the ability not to get into the paint much. Like he was just strictly taking threes, not over dribbling. Once he did get into the paint, it was really good passes to kind of create for these other guys. And he simply didn't have help. Like he just didn't have, like Bam just didn't have it. Bam just was kind of off on the bunnies and all that stuff. Bam was just super inefficient in this one. At least he was getting the shots. Jimmy, I thought this was a decent matchup for him. Like I felt like he usually plays well against Phoenix. I felt like there were certain guys on this team that he can mismatch hunt that I felt like this was going to be a decent game for him. And he just didn't have it. Like he didn't have it offensively to see like he was even almost getting to his spots because Kevin Durant was pretty much like you put length on Jimmy and it bothers him. And KD bothered him defensively. And then Terry, I think, is going to be a sticking point this episode because I think they just needed more from him. Like they need a more efficient Terry Rozier in these type of games, specifically when you're trying to get out of the mud of a fourth quarter and you need shot creation. So Kevin Durant, player of the game, like that's fine. They couldn't really deal with him, but we expect that from him. But I'd almost lean Tyler just for the reason that he legitimately almost matched Kevin Durant's production on a 32-point night.
Yeah, no doubt. And if they win,
the guy who got closest to matching Booker's production was the Heat's second leading scorer, Haywood Highsmith.
Yes.
19 points.
Well, right, and we'll get to Haywood more, but I want to stay on this just for a second here because you talk about the other guys that have to step up, and I feel like we're having this conversation a lot. Like, why are we constantly asking on night to night, like why their best or second best player supposedly hasn't stepped up? I mean, Jimmy played a great second half against Sacramento. I thought that was his best half of the season. But today he's just there. Like, I mean, 6 of 13, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Bam, like you said, he took 21 shots. I felt like 6 of them were on one possession. He ends up with 12 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. He just does not look consistently decisive. There was that dunk down the lane. There were a few plays that we could certainly talk about tonight. But I'm going to go back to this guy, and then, again, we'll get to the last play here as we start to dissect it. But, Alex, Terry Rozier, I'm not seeing it right now. And I like the trade, and so I can't go back on that. And he did provide some good moments last year when, he started to get his shot going, and he had some big moments late in games. But I don't know, man. He's not making them better right now. Last 2 games have been really rough. And tonight, it's not just the shooting. It's when he takes the shots. There were circumstances, and I know he doesn't like the term that he's a tough shot maker, bad shot maker. I know that part of that is a rhythm thing. But there are just some looks that you're like, wait, what, huh? Like, why are we doing that there? And this was a 2 of 10 game, 1 of 7 from 3, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. He doesn't settle things down for them right now, though, and it's kind of what they need.
Yeah, I think he's had a rough stretch of games here, and I think we're seeing, part of it is we're seeing the adjustment period that we were expecting to see last season when they traded for him, except, of course, they just, didn't all get to play together for much time. But now that they're all together, right, all the main guys who get the ball and have offense run for them, all their best players, right? I think we're seeing that adjustment period where, like, some nights he's going to have it and some nights he isn't. And I think that's kind of where it's at with Terry. And, of course, I think that's part of the reason why so many fans have been clamoring for one of the 2 guys in the backcourt to eventually be sent to the bench, at least for the starting lineup, is because like at a certain point, you're not going to get the production you want out of everybody night to night. Like there's always going to be a guy or two who you want more from if you're just looking night to night. And I think that's one of the ways that you can theoretically solve it. I just think Terry, like he once the shots weren't going in, there was a lot of hesitating. There was, and this is something like part of his game is like he'll get an advantage and then like step back and take a shot. Like he is not a cerebral point guard by any means. He's not going to get the advantage and take advantage of it every time. Like he likes hitting tough shots. Like I get it, and I think that part of his game is something that they need. But when it doesn't look good, like I think that's the pros and cons with Terry's game. Is like he gives you that layer of like tough shot making and extra shot creation that you don't have. But when he's having an off night, it just doesn't look like good basketball. And I think, like good for him that he gave you the 7 rebounds, the 5 assists, like that's cool and all. But when you're looking at him as somebody who was kind of a defensive minus, like he needs to be more efficient. And
he needs to be efficient and dynamic, like both. I mean, we're asking a lot of him. I get it, right? He's got to be aggressive getting the basket. He doesn't seem to want to finish when he's there. I mean, Alex, his finishing is problematic, isn't it? Like just percentage wise?
No, yeah, that's the thing. It's always, when you look at the percentage, it's always been like relatively low when you look at like compared to the rest of the league. He's hit the percentile, right, of his finishing stats are always low. I will say some of it is like I think he takes high difficulty layups at times, not all of them, because he's definitely smoked his fair share of open layups. I'm not trying to excuse that whatsoever. Those are, inexcusable. But he does take some tough ones. He does take some stuff in traffic. So I tend to give him, some leeway there. But these wide open ones, man, that's just brutal. I think he had honestly, this is probably the worst game he's had this season.
Yeah.
I thought just offensively, he was all over the place. Specifically, like his scoring game was off. And I think when that part of his game is off, it's like the rest of it, it doesn't compensate. Like you need that part of his game. And I think that's the problem with the Terry thing. You're always playing him next to Tyler too. Like I think this is the perfect game where like he didn't need to close. And I get why you want to have a guy like him out there. He had big closing moments last season, but this was not the night for him to close.
I would have closed with Duncan.
I would have closed with Pella.
Or Burks.
I was going to say the same thing. With one of Duncan or Pella. I think Duncan was having a good night. At least he gives you a little bit more size out there, even though if you're going to have a defensive minus, a guy who was hitting his shots and is 6'9", like, or Pella, just to have the extra defense against all those star talents. But yeah, like I think Terry, it was not the night for him to close. And every time he got the ball in the second half, it felt like he didn't know what to do with it. Like I think he got in his head a little bit with all the misses, and it just kind of manifested out there. Not that it's all his fault, right? We'll get to other things that may have costed them the game. But yeah, Terry, I think he's still figuring it out here. Like we always talked about, the backcourt thing all summer, and it was like, well, is Tyler going to have to adjust? And he did adjust, right? But he's been great. Like game to game, he's been great. Terry's the one whose numbers and whose production and consistency has been up and down. And I think that's something that we're going to be monitoring all season. I don't think he's going to be like an every night 20 a game type of guy. I think some nights he's going to have it and sometimes he's not.
So Brady, I want to get to the play here. So we'll do that in a second. We'll tee that up. But before we do, Bam was 5 of 21. I mean, we really talked about one game where he's been ultra efficient. It was the Washington game. Efficient and aggressive again. Like this is what you're kind of looking for, right? So the Washington game certainly, but I mean the opponent there was not much. I guess I just don't understand like why he's not able to go stronger more of the time down there. And I mean, this isn't about the 3-point shot, although he only took one, and there were 2 situations at least in this game that I counted that he could have turned around and taken it, and he wasn't facing the basket. It looked like the old days. So where are you with that?
So to that point, I want to hit on that first because I just think it's really interesting that so you've seen this develop into where he's positioning himself in the half court, where he's more willing to kind of spread out and play on the perimeter, and he could flow into handoffs much easier. But it almost feels like it's hurting his own scoring ability because he's out there, but he's not really letting the 3 fly. So it almost feels like he needs to get back to his old spots, his old comfort spots, and flow into the handoffs and stuff from there and then get into his stuff. But I'm not blaming any of that. I'm not blaming the offense or spacing or any of that. This just felt like a game where he missed a lot of easy ones early, and he just got in his head. I mean, there was a couple shots there where he made a shot, and every single time he's running down the court on defense, just shaking his head, and it's like it went on the entire game. Like if you go back and watch all 21 of those shots, I bet you he shook his head on like at least 18 of those. That just shows like how much he was just in his head. It felt like in this game, and it's really hard to bounce back out of that. Like it just is. And I just kind of felt like I have to give him credit because he was still attacking. Like that's the thing. Like the fact that he was still battling through it and still getting shots up and attacking is needed because Jimmy didn't have it, but he still didn't keep that same level of engagement to keep attacking. And it just felt like the position they were in and the way the end of the third quarter happened, they needed Jimmy to start the fourth with an offensive punch. They really did. With that second unit, they needed Jimmy to mismatch hunt. They needed him in the paint. They needed him getting to the free throw line. They needed something to change the pace of the game, and they didn't get that. And that's kind of where the fourth – it wasn't a third quarter problem, really. Yeah. There was a 15-3 run to end the third, but I don't even blame them on third quarter issues. Like that felt like a momentum run, and then the fourth quarter seemed like the problem to me where they just didn't have a counter. They didn't have a counter punch at any point. So the Bam thing is definitely a conversation. I mean, you said it. He's had one really good, efficient game, and he's struggled in a lot of these other games. And we could blame the offense and blame this other stuff, but they need him putting his head down. Like we saw early in the season, even when he wasn't making his free throws, he was getting to the line, kind of what we talked about in the offseason. You need that version of him. You need him finding a way to get to the line, put his head down, play physical, because putting up, out of 21 shots, he probably had 10 of them, half of them were bunnies, like these little flip shots that I just don't know if that's the correct formula for him. I think he needs to play a little bit stronger and try to find advantages.
And there were other guys missing bunnies too. I mean, Rozier did, Jimmy did early, so it wasn't just him. And we're going to get to the play. You know what? Let's do it here because we got to get to the where thing before we end. But let's get to the play of the day.
And now it's time for the X-Ray of the Play of the Day, brought to us by our friends over at Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services. Nelson and his team will bring the X-ray equipment and the staffing to you. If you work in a hospital or a medical office, get a consultation today at c-armandstaffing.com or give them a call at 561-891-9620. Their fleet of trucks at your service. Again, it's Mobile C-Arm and Staffing Services, 561-891-9620. And now, the X-Ray of the Play of the Day.
There's one play to look at here. There were others before this, but it came down to essentially one possession. They got it there because they were able to foul Devin Booker after he kind of got into the front court, took the pass, well-designed play by Bud, and then they get the foul, and Booker misses the first of two, almost missed the second one. It kind of sort of rolled in afterwards, and you got 4.8 seconds left, and I tweeted, is this going to be a Rozier step back or a Jimmy step back? Seemed like those were the two most likely options. And it ended up being no step back at all. It ended up being Rozier passing to Jimmy, who then hot potatoed it to Tyler after the game buzzer had already gone off. They've just had so many of these. And Brady, you said it when you came on, and I hate to be this negative, and I know Greg's not here to Sunshine Pump tonight, but it's just like we've kind of called the last couple games. Like you could see this stuff happening. They can't sustain leads. They're good enough to be competitive against good teams. But then when it comes down to a play here, they don't make it. What should have happened there? I'll let you both have a minute on this. Okay, so let's try to do this quicker than the Heat processed it. All right, Alex, first a minute. I'm going to time you. What could have happened there? Boom, go.
Jimmy should have not passed it to Tyler after the buzzer had basically sounded. That's my take. Take that bullshit shot that you had to, take those awkward step backs to take. Like, I get it. It's not an ideal shot. But Jimmy has had no problems his entire Heat tenure with taking questionable threes in clutch games. Like, since when has that ever stopped him? Like, I get it. You wanted to find the shooter. If you were going to make that pass, you should have done it earlier, right? Like, at that point, after you did that whole, back up the three, just take the shot. Like that's inexcusable. That's inexcusable. And I know he's gonna be upset with himself. The body language showed it as soon as it happened. Like I know he didn't mean to do that, whatever. But that's inexcusable. The shot has to go up there. Like you got Devin Booker to miss a free throw, and it's like, boom, you just do nothing with it. You can't even get a shot up. Like that's what should have happened. He should have just got the three up.
All right, Brady. Alex got it in before the buzzer and before the helicopters went off. Brady, you got a minute. Go.
Yeah, I mean, the ideal situation is feeding Tyler. I mean, that was pretty clear, but I think everybody knows in that situation, the ball never goes to the guy that you're expecting it to go to, especially on this team late in games. So I was kind of with you, Ethan. I thought it was going to be a Terry, kind of like a play for Terry, and they did draw up that play for Terry. Like that, Stuns made a good decision to double on the ball on Terry and force them into that. And it was kind of a bad pass by Terry because he kind of led Jimmy like inside the 3-point line, so he was forced to kind of pull the ball back out and it put him in a weird position. But I just don't trust them in those spots. Like I think every Heat fan when they were watching that last possession kind of knew how that was going to go. It never feels like that leads to a positive reaction. So what I have done, I mean, I try to find a way to get Tyler the ball, or like Alex said, get a shot up, but ultimately that was just an absolute mess. Like that just hasn't been their strength, and I don't really know what's going to change over the next few games.
Yeah, I don't think there's a player on the roster that's going to change that. I thought it might end up with a Highsmith 3. I thought there was a possibility. I mean, right? I mean, you draw 2 and
Duncan, didn't they?
What's that? I mean, look, what's that?
Didn't they put in Duncan on that final possession, or am I wrong?
Well, maybe they did, but I thought so before the timeout. They did put in Duncan. So again, you had Duncan on the floor. It could have been. Look, a Highsmith 3 for the bench would have been better than what they ended up with, which was no shot at all. It is frustrating because we've seen them be a good clutch team in the past, but like their clutch success was mostly predicated on good free throw shooting and good defense. These ones, it feels like the free throw shooting was better tonight. Much better. But it does feel like they're sort of reaching in those situations. They don't know where to go. And I don't mean that like they're lost, like Spoelstra's not telling them, but I mean like they just don't know what their bread and butter is. It was during the playoff runs, it was Jimmy just going nuclear. But other than that, like it's pretty clear Tyler's been their best offensive player this year. It's where the ball should have gone to. Duncan is their best pure shooter, I guess you could say. For it to end up like that was pretty ugly, but expected. And this is the problem, is that when you give up these leads in the third quarter, whether it's at the start of the third quarter or halfway through the third quarter, we talk about. I know you say it was kind of a blip in momentum, Brady, but I mean the reality was you could see it coming. They started taking quick shots. Like even Larson, who is like sort of my man crush at this point, but like he took a really bad early shot clock shot. Rozier, I believe, took one. And you could just feel the momentum going. I've seen once Durant starts to go downhill, you're screwed. And that sequence is when he started to go downhill on them. And after that, like you're not getting him out of rhythm. Like the best players in the world don't get him out of rhythm. You're throwing, a very game Haywood Highsmith, who played his ass off tonight, but he's 6'4", 6'5". I mean, what are we talking about? Like he's not going to be able to get Durant to not get that shot off. That shot that Durant has when he's fully extended is the most unstoppable shot for a wing or forward since Dirk's kick out. Like you're not doing anything with it. He's going to get it off against anybody. All right, we're going to get to the Defending the House segment in a minute, but I do want to address real quick 2 rotation changes today. So I'll give each of you guys one. What do you make, Brady, of Ware playing?
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of letting that guy figure it out. I mean, he came in the first 2 minutes, there was quite a few mistakes, and I think that's what we all expected. And I don't care. I don't care one bit about any one of those mistakes. If he dropped the ball, if he missed a defensive rotation, if any of that happened, I don't care. Because there's just too much upside there not to lean into it, and it wasn't that much worse than what we've seen from the past few weeks. Other than that, I thought he had really good moments. Like I'm watching him, aside from all that other stuff, I'm watching him in the paint on defense, and he's deterring shots. Like he's just standing there, and he had a couple forced misses around the rim. Guys are dribbling in, they pull the ball out, and I'm like, that's a change of pace. That's a different element for this team that they can lean into at least. He had a nice block, a nice recovery block from the backside. Banged a 3 to start the fourth quarter. The very first possession, offensive possession for Miami of the fourth quarter is a Kelowna 3 at a nice like fadeaway push shot at a certain point there. So I thought he had a pretty decent debut game. I mean, like I said, he made mistakes, but mistakes are going to happen for a rookie, and especially a rookie big. But I'm fine with it. I'll live through every single one of those. I would keep leaning into this because what we're seeing right now, and the same themes that we're discussing, the end of game stuff, the third quarter stuff, all this stuff that we've talked about for the last 3 years. Play the young guy. Give something different. Give a new element and play into the upside.
All right. So Jay Rich sits tonight. There was no Hawk. Hawkins was again hurt. Love not available. Jay Rich sits tonight. Do you know what? I'm going to make this the defending the house segment, and then we'll close. I'm going to give this to Alex. Go ahead.
And now it's time for our Defending the House segment, sponsored by our friends over at The Real Estate Shop. You can find them at realestateshopfl.com. That's with 2 P's and an E, realestateshopfl.com, or at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. This is Javier Iglesias and Amanda Martin. They help buyers and sellers in real estate. They're nimble and protective of their clients. They service the entire Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with a proven on-market strategy. The Real Estate Shop sellers earn the most money in the shortest time frame because Amanda and Javier have a deep understanding of the local market. So check them out. Again, it's at the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram, realestateshopfl.com, or give them a call at 954-268-9812. And now, who defended the house?
Well, clearly, Eric Spoelstra thought that Haywood Highsmith would defend the house better than Nikola Jovic was. Jovic played 5 minutes in the first half. We talked about him being a Myers-Leonard starter. He didn't even get the Myers treatment today because he didn't get to start the second half. Alex Spoelstra started Highsmith in the second half. Haywood ended up with 19 points, 7 rebounds on 7 of 8 shooting, including a couple of threes. Mm-hmm. We know what he offers, and it's not going to be that every night. It's going to be defense, the hustling. Although he finished, sometimes he has like he's got a little like wiggle in him sometimes when he's, he can finish at times. It sort of pops out of nowhere. But he played 31 minutes. I mean, is this, we were saying that we didn't understand why he wasn't playing more, and he seemed to be in Spo's doghouse. And then tonight he plays him that much. Jovic. Do you think that this is permanent? Is he going to start against Denver?
And that's a tough question, Ethan. I hadn't said that today, so I felt like I had to throw that in there. But it is, though, because I think it's one of those situations where you can do it, right? Like, you can start him there for Denver. He's obviously had experience playing against Denver in high leverage situations, and he fits the bill very much, I think, in that starting lineup. We've talked about it, right? We talked about it heading into this season, that potential lineup and kind of variations of like lineups that Haywood might work in, especially since we knew they were going to lean into Terry and Tyler as kind of starters and closers, which is pretty much what they've done so far. I think Haywood just fits in seamlessly with those guys, and you saw it tonight. No, I'm not expecting that level of, scoring and finishing at the basket. But that floater is money, though. I will say that the floater never surprises me anymore, even if it does look a little stiff at times. He's very comfortable with it. But the finishing at the rim, he's been pretty. He's shown some stuff off this year with that. I just feel like he's cleaned up some of those parts of his games where it's like you don't expect much scoring from him, but if those opportunities come up, he will take advantage. He can take an open three and make an open three. He can hit the floater if they're backing up a little bit. If he's all the rim, he can finish. Like, those things are important. Like, those easy baskets, he can give you them, right? The defense is top tier. Like, I think these things fit very well, but I don't know. I felt like my instinct is telling me my instinct is telling me that he's going to stick with Nico, but I think it's going to be these shorter stints. I think he's going to have a short leash with him. But I wouldn't be surprised, though. I wouldn't be surprised if he went with Haywood here. I just think it makes a lot of sense, and this is a really tough stretch in the schedule. Even though both of these games were very close and they easily could have won, right? Like, they were in reach. I think it's one of those things that they're willing to try, and I think there's some upside there for Nico off the bench. I would have to see how like those units work and the rotations work, but I think you can mix and match there a little bit and get a little bit more out of Nico when he isn't, having to play the majority of the time with like all 4 of their best players.
Well,
So
we've talked about
I think they can do it.
we've talked about that, Brady, and we'll finish it here. I mean that Nico maybe getting into some other lineups might be helpful to him. He hasn't been able to get into any other lineup at all, right? Basically, because he's playing the 2 stints. So, do you think if Haywood was to start, do you think it's a setup for Nico to go back to being a backup 5 coming off the bench, or are we looking at Nico completely out of the rotation?
I kind of expect a similar setup to this game, in all honesty. Like, I think this is what they go back to. I think that it's a case of Jovic gets the start, see how he plays, and if he doesn't have it, and either it's what we talked about in the last episode. We were talking about the third quarters, like what I was talking about. Like, if a guy doesn't have it, you have to have like just a quicker leash when you have depth. That's the whole reason of having depth. You can have that ability that Jovic in the start of this game just had a couple blips. It felt like offensively in certain things where it was like, and Haywood just fit this matchup that they can go to it. That it feels similar to Denver that they with the inability to usually play there, it feels like they might have to play a little faster and do some of that stuff. So Jovic may not be the worst thing in the world to lean into, but if some case they do lean into Haywood starting, I wouldn't mind seeing Jovic with some different lineups. I would be interested in seeing him off the bench with some of those guys, even next to Ware and some of these others, because he's put into a box, it feels like, a lot of the time in the starting lineup. And it almost feels like what everybody wanted to see originally from Jovic when we kept talking about the upside was seeing him kind of flourish in different ways with on the ball, off the ball, doing all this different stuff. We haven't really got to see that in this lineup. And I'm not saying that the starting lineup needs to be changed or will be changed with him at the 4. But I think they have to try stuff. I think they're at a position now early in the season where they have to mix some things around because this roster is built for that. They have the different guys. Even Pella is a perfect example. When Jaime comes back, is he just going to be shelved again? I don't think he should be. I think this guy's looking like one of their most like solid rotation guys right now that it feels like they have to find a spot for him. So they're going to have to make some decisions. I think this portion of things, like this topic specifically, is a good problem. The fact that we can talk about the Kalel Ware versus this guy or the Pella versus this guy or Jovic playing with, in different lineups and fitting the back of the rotation, that's all good things. So they could figure that stuff out. But I kind of do get the feeling it's Jovic to start in Denver, and I wouldn't be shocked if Haywood got to start the second half again.
Well, I'll finish it here. We talk about all these other peripheral players and all this depth and 14 guys that they can play. They're not going to beat a good team until they get Bam and Jimmy both playing at an all-star level on the same night. And until that happens, look, they've played 4 good teams so far. Orlando, they were close for a while, then got blown out. The Knicks game, they were close for longer. Knicks pulled away. Sacramento game, third quarter sunk them after they took a big lead. And then they sort of sunk them. They got back in position and then couldn't close the deal, couldn't get a rebound. And then Phoenix, we saw what happened tonight. They're just good enough to hang with these teams, but they're not good enough to beat these teams unless they get their 2 best guys playing well on the same night. And I'm getting to the point where I don't even know if those are the 2 best guys because they haven't been the 2 best guys so far this season. The third guy has been the guy everybody wanted traded. Alex, appreciate it. Brady, appreciate it. We'll do live this weekend, I think, either Friday or Sunday. So stay tuned for that. I have Jason Jackson on the pod next, so make sure you check that out on 5 on the Floor. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.